All right, welcome everybody to episode 1 of
Number
Fine
1.
Home Talks, the big one. And honestly, guys, this is actually the third try of episode 1 as we've kind of figured out microphones and soundboards. Technology, which is always fun.
Always fun.
Restart your computers at least, a few times. But so what is this podcast about? It's about all of the experience we've both had in buying houses, selling houses, remodeling houses, property management,
Yep.
dealing with the public.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm here with my wife, Sarah Perrotti, who is
The one and only.
Who has kind of we've both been on this journey for, not to age, to date ourselves, but close to 20 years of lots of fun stuff. So,
Yep.
Sarah, why don't you kind of, when did you get all started in this, and kind of course I know, but for the listeners, what do you like about real estate? What's going on?
Yeah. Well, anyone that knows me knows that I could remember old phone numbers, as you know, but I can't always remember dates. So ask me to quote myself. I'll have to look back. But I'm jumped right into this full time, right? I have my master's in social work from UConn. Go Huskies. And I was just trying to think about what would lend itself, right? I liked what I got my degree in, but I knew I kind of figured out what I wanted to do by omission, right? Some people just know. I was just like, I know what I don't want. So I started managing our rentals, right? And then I was working in the field at the time. And my last full-time job prior to being a realtor, I worked at a college, helping students as an advisor. And lo and behold, one thing led to another, and I'm full-time. And I've been full-time as a realtor. I have my broker's license as well with Regency Real Estate, and I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Loving it. It's interesting. And I've learned a lot just from you. I'm always asking Dave questions on our walks all the time, calling him on showings. Luckily, I have a direct consult. But in my spare time, we watch this old house, and always learning, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I think, being in both sides for, in the remodeling space and you in the buying and selling, and then also us dealing with renters, we really get to see how much of a big deal home ownership is, and that, starting out as a renter and then going into buying that home.
Yeah.
There's so many nuances and there's so much education that I think a lot of people don't do, and they should.
Yeah.
And then once you buy the house, especially in the state of Connecticut, most homes are, I think it's 70 or 80% of homes are 30 years or older. So you're going to have to remodel. So when people dive in,
or you could sell.
Or you can sell.
Right. But this is what we're here for.
Right.
Right. It's the whole education piece and helping people to figure out, obviously this is not surface level, but as tips and tricks along the way that we've learned. But how do you distinguish the difference?
Right.
Right. And and not even necessarily the difference, but people don't know what they don't know.
Right. And they don't even know who to talk to.
Or what questions to ask.
And they, a mortgage broker comes in and says, hey, you can afford this monthly payment, and they just go look at a price for a house, and you go out. And if you don't have a experienced realtor, that's about all you're going to get. You're going to get a monthly payment, and you could get a house that needs a ton of work over the next, the next 10 years, or you could get that lemon, or you're not prepared.
It's so funny that you say lemon. I was literally just going to say lemon, but at no point, and this is any price, I need everybody to hear, you can have a $14 million home that wasn't built right. I mean, it's true. Just because you have a lot of square footage and a lot of space doesn't mean it was a quality build with great materials that's going to last forever and done correctly.
I love that home inspector on TikTok that I think he just does high-end, like $1 million homes, and he absolutely
tears them apart. But he doesn't have to really look that hard.
Right.
And some brand new, I say this to all the people, brand new construction.
Yeah.
So it's not price, has nothing to do with price. It has nothing to do with, it's about your team, right? The first question I ask people is, did the realtor you hire ever buy a home? Think about that.
And even so they can understand the emotional
part. But the same thing as a contractor. A contractor just has to pay money to the state of Connecticut to get a little license.
Right.
And I say that because it's true. A little license, right? Like
it's a registration.
You don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
So did the person that you're hiring ever build something? Think about that.
Or build the project that you want done.
Yes.
Like,
what experience do they really have?
Right.
And a lot of people are like, oh, well, and that's not to say, but you have to understand, in order to guide people, in my opinion, you have to have lived the process, right? And I always say, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same process, right? Like, however, it's meaning the same, I've bought a farm, but to empathize and know, okay, I have a good team and I've done this thing before multiple times, right? For us, at least.
And especially in the realtor space, I mean, there's so many part-time realtors. So, you could have
Well, it was so sexy for so long, right? The advent of HGTV, everyone's like, ooh, this is such a fun job and it's so cool.
And so you could have a realtor that it has been doing this for 20 years, but did it part-time.
Yeah.
And's done 40 transactions. And the thing is that, a good realtor does 40 transactions in a year. The experience. And likewise in contracting, I mean, we're, a bigger company. We did like 200 remodels in the last year and a half. That's more remodels than a lifetime carpenter.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the other thing, too, that I think is a big difference, number one, is that people don't realize it. I'll speak for, I know I could speak for you, too, but I'm interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing me, right? Like, this is a full relationship that's built on trust and communication. Our marriage is based on trust, communication, it's we have a partnership, but I'm entering into it. Obviously it's vastly different, but it's not in some ways, right? Like a buyer or seller that works with me, we're a team. They know I bring my team, and that even if there's some blips, some bumps in the road, look at this market, the way that we just kind of came out of it. It was bananas, like crazy. Ooh, just tapped my microphone. Crazy, this market. And like you couldn't jump high enough. You had buyers. I mean, you remember, I was leaving the house. I was driving to Avon, Simsbury, Burlington. I was all over because, I mean, we were focused, but the market was so nuts.
And I think honestly, we're going to see when interest rates come back down, there's going to be a lot of buyer's remorse because there was a lot of people just wanting to get a home coming out of COVID, realizing they could work from home.
Yeah.
A lot of people jumped into homes without, and even in the last year, putting that additional, $50,000-$100,000 down cash just to get into the home.
Yeah. And
Just-
taking a lot of risks with
Yeah.
inspections that
Right, waiving
I would never.
inspections. So I
Yeah.
feel like, and not and doing this in like this urgency. It was more of like this
It was chaos.
chaos. And I think what we're going to see is once interest rates come down a little bit and it frees them up the market, that people are going to be like, that we made a bad decision on this home and we need to move. And part of that bad decision was probably because of the team they surrounded themselves with that didn't get to know them. And, it's, as a realtor, I would imagine you want to sit down and like, what are the, let me ask you a bunch of questions. And in remodeling, it's the same thing. We need to ask you lots of questions about what's the purpose of this.
Yeah, completely. And really, again, what's the goal? And I say to my buyers all the time, like, number one, like you can physically pick up and move a house, but you won't, right? So you're buying zip code, community, restaurants, amenities. You're buying more than just the physical structure of a home, your land. But we could fix aesthetics, right? We can give you guys a call. They could say, we want XYZ done, a new bathroom, new kitchen. Great. It's going to add value. Awesome. But at the end of the day, like none of my buyers, I don't believe will, in this chaos, regret, because we talked about calculated risk. We were smart with our offers, but we talked about calculated risk. And I make sure the people on my list are the best people available. There is no other option. I know that you have the same with your subs.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to have those conversations of like, what we talk about in remodeling is that where are you in your 5-year? Where are you in your 10-year? And when you're coming to buying a house, like are you going to need more space? And are you going to end up moving again, or do you want to put an addition? Can there an addition be on the thing?
Totally. And I have the same. It's funny because I have the same conversation with my buyers as well, right? If it's a family, or excuse me, a couple, and they're trying to expand. Okay, their family. How many people? How many bedrooms will you need? COVID changed everything.
Right. Because that one bedroom now turns to an
office.
That you
and usually, sometimes we need 2 offices now. Okay, well, we were looking at a 3-bedroom. Now we're at a 5 minimum. Mm-hmm. Another big thing that this could be a whole show. A lot of this stuff could be a whole show, but in-laws. Right? A lot of, or accessory dwellings. There's a lot of that. That could be a whole, and it probably will be, guys, a whole different podcast.
100%, because you have in-laws, which is a huge demand too, and we'll get into that. You're right in another episode, but you have the in-laws, but then you also have the baby boomers that actually have a lot of the wealth right now. Totally. That are maybe downsizing, but they're downsizing to thinking about the accessibility of the home.
Yep.
So you're looking for those ranches, single level ranches, and then we're looking at like the remodeling side. How can these people stay in their homes?
Yep.
And if they have mobility issues.
Yeah, and the other thing is making smart decisions if you're going to remodel to then resell, right? Because when I'm talking about the difference between remodeling with somebody and selling, instead of doing the remodel, there's, again, this is a whole other podcast, right? But there's a whole different set of questions talking about communications and questions and all of that to help people make the decision, I don't want to get too
Yeah,
far in
I
the
mean-
weeds about it, but it's very, it's a interesting point of conversation. One of the things I talk about a lot is how much space are you even using in your home? So even if you, for example, as a company can come in and get them a chairlift or an elevator or whatever. Okay, well then great. You have an elevator in your house now, and that's awesome. That cost, I'm just making it up, let's call it $300,000. I don't know what it costs. All right, well, where are we now in the process of like, are you still too isolated? Like there's so much that goes into it. And people building right now, we talk about tips and tricks. One of the hot tips I have is think about a first floor primary. I don't care if you have a colonial. I don't care if you're building, especially builders. I don't understand why they're not doing that more. But as, any renovations or anything like that. Yeah, just a hot tip with that one.
I think it was fun because we wanted to make this podcast see where it went. And obviously it's just, it's showing that how extensive, like there's just so much
we
to
could
talk
really
about,
get into the weeds.
and there's like so many directions you can go when it comes to home ownership and remodeling. But I think the point of this, episode 1 is to really just exemplify how it is so important to, when you're going to do anything with such a big purchase or a home, is to bring in people that have experience. And I think even more so to do your own research. And if, I think we see this so often, like people are not looking at, you don't get a class in high school about home ownership or buying a home or
even to your earlier point, even the evaluation. How are you as a consumer breaking down this big purchase? Because at least anecdotally, and I can't, I don't have any scientific proof. It seems as though, I can only speak for my industry, that there's a lot of thoughtlessness that is,
well, it's the American dream, right? It's the American dream. You got to get the home. You got to have,
No, I get that. But I'm saying about like even selecting a realtor. Right. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of, I can count on my hands. Actually, I've been interviewed 3 times. Think about that. I mean, and the direct referrals are great, and I love them, and they're amazing. But from just a perspective, I think that's super interesting. Most people's house and a car, right? Most expensive purchase usually, unless your
home's your biggest investment.
So it's an interesting, like, again, just to think about, okay, how do I want to work too? Like, how do you want to communicate? There's a lot of fantastic realtors, and I'm not saying I'm the only one. You're not the only remodeler. You're not. We both know this. How do you, as a consumer, want to work? Do you want to have technology? Do you want to not? Do you, like, there's so much that goes into it. And asking these questions is super important to know in setting expectations.
Well, it's going to make the it's going to make all of the transaction that much smoother. Or if it's a project, it's going to be smoother.
Yeah.
And honestly, contractors never get interviewed. They're just asked to give a price.
Yeah. That's the interview only.
It's the price.
Just the price.
Well, what's the cost?
I know, which is interesting, right? Like your Kohl's.
Right.
Or no offense to Kohl's, but,
right.
As an example, a big box store like a Coupon or something like that. It's so interesting to me.
Because it's a service, right? It's how much expertise they have, the quality.
But again, flipping the switch, not to cut you off, but on the biggest asset that they own, that's, in my mind, where it gets a little skewed. Like, that's what I don't understand. Like, wouldn't you want the absolute best to be in the most expensive asset instead of like looking for that big box coupon, the cheapest deal. That's what I don't understand. And then when they turn around and there's problems,
Well, I mean, when you go shopping for, a heart surgeon, you go for the most expensive,
I
the
say
guy
it all
that
the
drives
time.
the Porsche and is the
The
best.
best. And it's
Not
not
the cheapest.
or the guy that lives down the street or
Right.
or person. We
Right.
shouldn't say guy because I'm
Right.
sure there's amazing other female and non-binary, heart surgeons. But the point is that the way, typically the way that people used to make decisions was the doctor in the town, the lawyer in the town, the whatever that lived closest to you.
Yep.
And I say that all the time. That's such a good example, is that I don't want the person who is the surgeon who lives closest to me. I want the best.
Right. And that's what we did with our attorneys. I mean, it was we listened to podcasts and the guy was very,
Yeah.
the leading edge
it's funny because
of legal structures.
the attorneys that are on my list, I say to my people, they're not necessarily like you're going to have to drive
Right.
to go to closing, but it's worth the drive.
Yeah.
It's worth an
Because
extra
they're gonna
10 or
actually-
15 minutes
They're going to
in the
get
car.
you to the closing. The
They're-
other ones won't get you to the
They're
closing.
not even going to get you to the they 100% they're going to get you to the closing, but they're also available. I don't think people don't value availability and communication until you don't have it. When you don't have it and it's the day of closing and you don't even know where you're supposed to be as the close, you can't get a hold of your person. Like, what kind of level of expectation is that in a professional relationship? Yet, because of the lack of due diligence at the beginning, that's what happens. I think I just put that together. That's the consequence of it. You just kind of go with whoever.
Yep.
And it's a thoughtless decision, and it could go fine, but if it's only when something happens, that's when it's noticeable.
So what do you think? Where do you think it starts? Where somebody's about to go buy their home? Where should they start?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always hysterical when you're on social media like Facebook and someone's like, I need a realtor, and you have 159 recommendations within 30 seconds, and I'm probably not exaggerating. What I would say is that I'm looking for a realtor for I think that's a fine thing to do, but I think people need to put more thought into that post. I'm looking for a realtor who is, full time. Looking for a realtor. And again, if you do that on social media, there's a lot of people who won't, people won't even read it and they'll just put their friend or whoever. I would Google, I would read reviews. I would pick out at minimum of 3 people. I always say the magic of 3. And then talk to them. Sit down and chat with them. Have a call. Have a Zoom. Talk about the way that you would like communication to go. What are their ideals? What's their experience? What's their personality? You want to get along with the person too and have fun with it. It's a serious thing, but you could enjoy it. I don't know if you would say the same thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's, they have to, the professional, whoever you're going to hire in any profession, they have to be good. And you want the best in that profession on the expertise. But you also want to find somebody that meshes with you
Totally.
personally.
Yep.
So do they have like a similar communication, and what are the expectations? Do you feel comfortable with them? Because somebody, you can go to that, the doctor that's like brilliant, but like is like super abrasive, and you don't want to open up, or you don't want to talk to them about things. So it's like,
and sometimes that's fine. And if that's what you want, that's what you want.
Right.
And I think that's the difference. I think it's understanding what you're looking for in a professional and what you need. Right. Like there's sometimes where I have certain clients who send me a house and I'm like, like there's and then we have a great time during showings and things like that. It's all different.
You might, as you're looking for a realtor, it might be really stressful for you, and you might need someone that is more, that can help you emotionally.
Yeah.
So kind of walk you through the emotional sides
Yeah.
of this super stressful. Or if you're a very analytical person and you just want all the numbers, and you
details.
want all the details and
Yep.
your ROIs and all of this, that might be a different realtor. That's what they're that's their strength. So, they have everything all spelled out for you. And then there's other people who just don't want that. They just want to say everything's going to be okay and this is a nice house.
Yeah, and making sure that you realize you're hiring the person, but also their team. And I know we have only a couple minutes left, but for me, it's hard to get on my list. Hard. It's easy. I don't want to say easy, but you only get a couple of chances and then you're off my list because it matters that much to me. That's what I'm trying to say, is that my referrals are very important to me. And I mean that, because they are an extension of who I am and how I work. So I won't keep somebody on if there is, for whatever reason, a dissatisfaction of performance or something happens. And unfortunately, I know that you probably experience the same thing.
I mean, that goes with it. I mean, we say in the office all the time, they're good till they're not.
Yeah.
And honestly, sometimes it's just people go through tough times.
Oh, totally.
If it's business growth or whatever. But sometimes they can't get out of that swing, and sometimes we'll use people, then we won't use them, and then they get their act together.
And they kind of come back on.
And then
totally. And that's obviously not personal, it's business. But my point to surmise it is what to do. Finishing up episode 1 here, make sure that you're picking 3 professionals, interviewing them, understanding who they are, who their team is, and having a level of trust is super important, and a clear understanding of open communication.
And doing your research. If you're going to go into home ownership, it is really something that you need to dive into and understand what a roof is, your heating system, all of the things about your home.
Totally. And if you don't care, or you don't, you want to just pay somebody else to care, communicate that.
Right.
We can help get you the people to care,
right.
Yeah. So that's just it.
So all good stuff. I mean, we are going to try to dive into an actual topic, because I kind of felt like this one went, we kind of bounced around too much, and there wasn't a good focus.
Yeah.
But this is episode 1. I mean, I'm excited to do episode 100 and really see the difference of the refining of how to.
Well, I think this just goes to show you how much we could talk about and the different areas and roads we can go down, because it's extensive. And really, it also shows how excited we get, and that when we go home at night, this is still what we talk about.
No, we love it. And, honestly, it touches most people's lives. Everybody needs a place to live. And, it's a big part of people's lives. So for episode 1, we'll wrap it up. We're cutting this stuff up into bite-sized pieces if we have good words of wisdom in between the 30 minutes. So, obviously check us out on all the social media platforms.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And, of course, this will be more of a routine thing. We're going to try to do this along with lots of other guests, and I'm excited. I think I have 17 or 18 guests lined up. So that's going to be excited. Everybody in the real estate profession
sector, there's a lot of professionals.
And I think everybody's going to be surprised on how specialized real estate and all that stuff is. So till then, Sarah, thanks
Yeah.
for coming on, and till next time.
Yeah. Thanks.